Force is not a strategy. It's a signal. And the moment you understand what that signal is communicating to the field, everything about manifestation begins to reorganize. Because whenever you are forcing, pushing, insisting, or trying to make reality move, you are unknowingly announcing that your internal state is misaligned with what you're asking for. Reality doesn't resist you randomly. It responds precisely. Force exists when the nervous system does not feel safe in the present moment. It appears as urgency, pressure, constant mental effort, or the feeling that if you don't act now, something will be lost. This state feels productive on the surface, but energetically it is incoherent. It broadcasts instability, not power, and the field answers instability with friction. This is why so many people feel like they are always doing something to manifest, yet nothing flows naturally. They are generating intention from a state of internal tension. The body is braced. The mind is monitoring. Attention is leaning forward into the future. That forward-leaning posture is the opposite of alignment. Alignment does not lean. Alignment settles. When energy is aligned, it does not push reality. It creates a condition where reality no longer needs to be pushed. This is a crucial distinction that changes everything. Force assumes resistance. Alignment removes the reason for resistance to exist. Most people never feel this difference because their nervous system has been conditioned to associate effort with value. They believe that if they are not trying, nothing is happening. But this belief itself is the very thing slowing reality down. From a neurobiological perspective, force activates the stress response. The brain shifts into high beta. The body releases cortisol. The system prepares for threat, competition, or survival. In this state, perception narrows. Possibility collapses prematurely. The field receives a signal of urgency and compensates by delaying. Delay is not punishment. Delay is regulation. The quantum field responds to coherence, not insistence. Coherence means that thought, emotion and body are broadcasting the same message. When you are forcing, those signals are fragmented. The mind wants an outcome, but the body is signaling that something is missing. That contradiction creates noise. Noise is what prevents clean movement. Aligned energy feels radically different. It is calm but not passive. It is focused but not tight. It carries certainty without needing proof. When someone is aligned, they do not feel the impulse to manage timing. They act when action is obvious and rest when rest is appropriate. There is no internal argument with the present moment. This state is uncomfortable for anyone addicted to urgency. At first, alignment feels like nothing is happening. That feeling is deceptive. What's actually happening is that the system is no longer interfering. The noise is dropping. The field now has space to respond without distortion. This is why reality moves without force only after force disappears internally. You cannot create alignment through willpower. You cannot force yourself to stop forcing. Alignment happens when the nervous system recognizes that safety no longer depends on control. When that recognition stabilizes, effort dissolves naturally. This is where manifestation stops feeling like work and starts feeling like response. The most powerful creators are not intense. They are steady. They do not chase. They position. They do not convince reality. They allow it to meet them where they already are. Force tries to drag the future into the present. Alignment allows the future to arrive on its own. And the moment you feel that difference in your body, you realize something important. Nothing was ever blocked. Reality was simply waiting for you to stop interfering. This is the level where energy becomes so aligned that movement feels inevitable, not effortful. And once you experience this state, forcing no longer feels powerful. It feels unnecessary. Alignment feels passive only to a nervous system that was trained in urgency. This is one of the most important distinctions you can understand if you want reality to move without force. When your body has spent years associating safety with effort, control, and anticipation, calm does not feel natural. It feels suspicious. The nervous system learns through repetition, not logic. If most of your life required you to stay alert, prepared, or emotionally braced, your body internalized a simple rule. Movement equals safety. Stillness equals risk. Even when your conscious mind wants ease, the body resists it. This is why alignment initially feels uncomfortable. When the system begins to regulate, urgency drops. The internal pressure to act, fix, plan, or monitor softens. And instead of feeling relief, many people feel anxiety. Not because something is wrong, but because the nervous system no longer recognizes the state it's in. The mind interprets this unfamiliar calm as stagnation. From a neurobiological perspective, this makes sense. The brain is a prediction machine. It constantly compares the present moment to stored patterns. When the present does not match familiar stress-based patterns, the brain flags it as uncertain. Uncertainty triggers vigilance. Vigilance pulls you back into effort. This is how people sabotage alignment without realizing it. They feel a moment of calm, then immediately think, I should be doing something. That thought is not intuition. It's conditioning. It's the nervous system trying to return to a familiar level of arousal because familiarity once meant survival. But alignment does not operate at that level. Aligned energy is regulated energy. It is coherent, not stimulated. It does not need constant input to remain stable. And because it is stable, it becomes magnetic. The problem is that most people have never experienced safety without effort. So when effort drops away, the body doesn't relax. It panics quietly. That panic reintroduces force and force resets the loop. This is why learning to tolerate alignment is just as important as accessing it. You don't train this tolerance by thinking differently. You train it by staying present in the body while doing less. By noticing the impulse to intervene and choosing not to act on it. By letting the nervous system learn through experience that nothing collapses when you stop pushing. This is reconditioning. Each time you remain still without danger, the body updates its reference point. Each time you resist the urge to force movement, the system learns that safety exists without urgency. Over time, this rewires the association between effort and worth. This is where alignment deepens. From a quantum perspective, this is critical. The field responds to sustained coherence, not brief moments of calm. If you touch alignment but immediately leave it because it feels uncomfortable, the signal never stabilizes long enough for reality to reorganize. Reality moves toward what is consistent. This is why aligned people often appear patient but not passive. Their nervous system is not waiting. It is available. Availability feels like nothing is happening until something moves effortlessly. The moment you stop interpreting calm as delay, alignment becomes sustainable. You begin to notice that action taken from alignment is different. It feels clean. There's no internal debate, no second guessing. You act because it's obvious, not because you're afraid of missing out. This recalibration takes time, not because you're slow, but because the body needs repetition to trust a new baseline. Each moment you choose not to force is a moment you teach the nervous system a new truth. Ease is safe. And once ease is safe, alignment stops feeling passive. It starts feeling powerful. This is the threshold where reality no longer needs to be pushed because the internal system has stopped pulling away from the present moment. And when nothing inside you is pulling away, reality finally has space to move. One of the most subtle traps in manifestation is mistaking intention for alignment. On the surface, they can look identical. You feel clear about what you want. Your thoughts are organized. Your vision makes sense. And yet, reality still doesn't move without effort. That's because intention can exist entirely at the level of the mind. While alignment is always a full-body state, the field does not respond to what you want. It responds to what your entire system is signaling. Mental intention is directional. It points somewhere. It says this is what I'm aiming for. Energetic alignment, on the other hand, is positional. It says this is where I am. And reality always responds to position before direction. This is why so many people feel like they are doing everything right and still experiencing resistance. Their mind is aligned but their body is not. The nervous system is still broadcasting tension, anticipation, or subtle dissatisfaction. That contradiction creates friction in the signal. From a neurobiological perspective, intention activates the prefrontal cortex. Alignment activates the entire system. Intention thinks, alignment settles; intention plans, alignment stabilizes. And unless the body feels settled in the present moment, the field reads the signal as incomplete. This is where force sneaks back in. You may not feel like you're pushing, but the moment you are mentally attached to an outcome, the body begins to lean forward. Breath shortens slightly. Muscles tighten imperceptibly. Attention narrows. These micro-signals tell the field that something is missing. Now, even if the mind believes otherwise, that missing signal is enough to slow everything down. True alignment feels paradoxical. It carries clarity without anticipation, desire without urgency, focus without tension. This is why it's so hard to recognize at first. There is no emotional spike to validate it, no excitement to confirm you're on the right track. In fact, alignment often feels uneventful. This is where people abandon it prematurely. They think alignment should feel powerful when in reality it feels ordinary. The power is not in intensity. It's in consistency. And consistency only exists when the nervous system is not being pulled by expectation. Expectation is the quiet form of force. Expectation says, this should happen because I've done the work. Alignment says nothing at all. It simply remains coherent. And silence is a much stronger signal than demand. From a quantum perspective, intention without alignment collapses probability too early. You fixate on a specific outcome, timing, or form. That fixation restricts the field's ability to organize something cleaner, faster, or more accurate. Alignment leaves probability open. This is why aligned outcomes often surprise people. They arrive through paths that were not planned, predicted, or visualized. The mind could not have orchestrated them because the mind was not in control. The moment you realize this, you begin to feel the difference internally. Alignment has no internal argument. There is no part of you trying to convince another part. Thought, emotion, and body are not negotiating. They are unified. That unity is what removes force. Force exists only when there is internal disagreement. One part wants to move forward. Another part does not feel safe. Alignment resolves that disagreement by bringing the entire system into the present. This is why aligned people don't constantly talk about what they're manifesting. They don't rehearse it mentally. They don't seek validation. Not because they're hiding, but because nothing feels unresolved inside. The desire has already been integrated emotionally. When that integration happens, reality doesn't need persuasion. It doesn't need visualization. It doesn't need pressure. It responds because the signal is clean and uninterrupted. This is the difference between asking reality to change and allowing it to respond. And once you feel this difference, you can no longer confuse intention with alignment. You recognize immediately when effort has crept back in, not by analyzing your thoughts, but by sensing your body. The body never lies about alignment. It either feels settled or it doesn't. And only one of those states allows reality to move without force. There is a very specific internal state where reality stops asking for your effort. It's not a moment of surrender, and it's not a decision you make with the mind. It's a condition the nervous system enters when interference finally drops below a critical threshold. At that point, reality no longer needs correction, direction, or encouragement. It simply moves. This state is not dramatic. That's why most people miss it. They expect the moment where things stop requiring force to feel powerful, exciting, or emotionally elevated. In truth, it feels surprisingly normal, quiet, almost boring. And that ordinariness is exactly how you know you're there. When reality no longer needs your help, you stop trying to manage it internally. You're not asking questions like, "Am I aligned?" or "Is this working?" Those questions belong to a system that still feels incomplete. In this state, there is no internal monitoring. Attention is present, but it isn't checking. The nervous system has stopped negotiating with the future. From a biological perspective, this is the point where the stress response is no longer active beneath the surface. Even subtle forms of tension disappear. The body is not braced. Breath is steady without control. Muscles are not preparing for movement that hasn't happened yet. This is regulation without effort. And regulation is what allows reality to move cleanly. In this state, action becomes minimal but precise. You don't feel compelled to do more. You feel guided to do what's necessary. Decisions don't feel heavy. They don't require justification. They appear as obvious next steps, and once taken, they don't echo mentally afterward. This is a critical sign. When reality still needs your help, actions are followed by mental replay. You think about what you said, what you chose, what you should have done differently. When reality no longer needs your help, action completes itself. There is no residue. From a quantum perspective, this means the observer has stopped interfering with the process of collapse. Probability is no longer being distorted by emotional attachment, expectation, or fear. The field receives a stable signal long enough to finalize outcomes. Stability is what allows movement. Another sign you're in this state is how you relate to time. You're not waiting, but you're also not rushing. Time feels neutral. There's no sense that something must happen soon for things to be okay. That pressure belonged to a system that believed safety lived in outcomes. Here, safety lives in presence. This is why reality begins to move on its own. The field responds to systems that are not asking for proof. Proof only becomes necessary when coherence is unstable. When coherence holds, reality doesn't need to convince you of anything. You trust without effort. This trust is not philosophical. It's somatic. The body knows it can remain settled even if nothing changes immediately. And because the body is not demanding movement, movement accelerates naturally. This is the paradox that defines alignment. The less you require reality to move, the easier it does. Most people never stay in this state long enough to let reality complete its adjustment. The moment nothing seems to be happening, they reintroduce effort. They think alignment should feel active. They mistake silence for delay and they pull themselves back into force. But if you remain here, not passively but steadily, something important happens. Reality begins to approach you instead of you approaching it. Conversations initiate themselves. Opportunities present without planning. Solutions surface without pressure. Not because you attracted them, because you stopped interrupting them. This is the level where manifestation no longer feels like creation. It feels like reception. You're not making something happen. You're allowing what's already in motion to arrive. And the clearest sign that you're in this state is simple. You're not trying to stay in it. The moment you stop protecting alignment, alignment stabilizes. Reality moves without force. When nothing inside you is pulling against the present moment. And when that resistance dissolves, there is nothing left for reality to push through. It simply moves. When reality begins to move without force, it does not announce itself through dramatic events. It shows itself through a change in resistance. Things don't suddenly explode into motion. They stop pushing back. And this difference is subtle enough that many people overlook it entirely. One of the first external signs is how obstacles lose their density. Situations that once felt heavy, complicated, or emotionally charged become lighter without explanation. Problems don't necessarily disappear, but they no longer demand the same amount of energy. You deal with them without friction. You respond instead of react. This shift is not psychological optimism. It's energetic efficiency. When your internal state is aligned, reality no longer needs to create tension to redirect you. Resistance was never punishment, and it was feedback. And once the feedback is no longer needed, resistance dissolves. Another sign is timing smoothing out. You stop missing opportunities. You stop arriving too early or too late. Conversations happen at the right moment without orchestration. Information shows up exactly when you're ready to receive it, not when you were searching for it. This is not coincidence. It's synchronization. From a quantum perspective, this happens because the observer is no longer interfering with probability through anticipation or control. The system is coherent long enough for timing to self-organize. Reality moves in clean arcs instead of fragmented bursts. You may also notice that people respond to you differently, not because you changed your behavior intentionally, but because your energy is no longer asking for validation, agreement, or reassurance. Interactions feel simpler. There is less negotiation, less emotional noise. Aligned energy does not seek confirmation. And because it doesn't seek, it doesn't provoke resistance. Another external indicator is how decisions stop feeling heavy. You don't agonize over choices. You don't overthink consequences. Decisions arise naturally. And once made, they settle. There's no mental replay, no second guessing loop. This shows that the nervous system trusts itself. When the system trusts itself, reality doesn't need to slow things down to protect you. Many delays exist because the field is waiting for internal readiness. When readiness stabilizes, delay loses its function. This is why aligned movement often feels faster without feeling rushed. You might also notice a reduction in dramatic emotional highs and lows. Life feels more even, less extreme. At first, this can feel underwhelming if you're used to intensity. But this emotional evenness is not boredom. It's balance. Balance is what allows sustained creation. In this phase, results often arrive quietly. A message that changes something. A small opportunity that opens a larger door. A decision that shifts a trajectory. None of these moments feel monumental at the time. But in hindsight, you realize they were pivots. Reality doesn't force transformation. It introduces it gently when force is no longer required. Another sign is the disappearance of the urge to tell everyone what you're doing or planning. Not because you're hiding, but because nothing feels unresolved. Aligned energy is complete internally, so it doesn't look outward for reinforcement. This internal completion is magnetic. Externally, what you may notice that what used to feel like effort now feels optional. You can act when needed, but you're no longer driven by pressure. You can rest without guilt. You can pause without fear of falling behind. This is one of the clearest signals that force has exited the system. From this place, manifestation becomes predictable. Not because you know what will happen, but because you trust how things unfold. You no longer measure progress emotionally. You measure it by ease. Ease is not laziness. Ease is alignment without interference. The moment you start using ease as your reference point, you realize how much effort was compensating for misalignment before. And you also realize something else. Reality was always willing to move. It was waiting for you to stop pulling against it. When force dissolves internally, movement begins externally. And by the time changes become visible, they don't feel surprising. They feel appropriate. Like something arriving exactly when it should, not sooner, not later. This is how you know alignment is real. Not because everything is perfect, but because nothing feels blocked. Reality is no longer something you wrestle with. It's something that meets you halfway without resistance, without pressure, and without force. At some point, you realize that alignment was never something you needed to create. It was something that emerged naturally once you stopped interfering with your own signal. This is the final and most important understanding. Reality never needed to be convinced. It only needed a clear, stable invitation. When force leaves the system, effort doesn't disappear. Distortion does. You still act. You still choose. You still move. But movement no longer carries emotional weight. You're not trying to outrun anything, prove anything, or fix anything about yourself. The nervous system is no longer braced against life. This is what real power feels like. Quiet, unannounced, stable. From a biological standpoint, your system has learned a new baseline. Safety is no longer linked to control. Worth is no longer linked to effort. The body has stopped signaling urgency. And because of that, reality has stopped responding with resistance. From a quantum perspective, this is coherence sustained long enough to let probability complete itself. You're no longer collapsing outcomes prematurely with expectation or doubt. The observer is present without interference, and that presence is what allows movement to finalize. This is why aligned manifestation never feels dramatic. Drama is a sign of friction. Ease is a sign of flow. When reality moves without force, it doesn't feel like a miracle. It feels like something finally arriving at the right moment. You may look back and realize that the delay was never external. It was internal preparation. Every moment of frustration, every pause, every recalibration was shaping the nervous system into a state capable of holding more without gripping. Nothing was wasted. Alignment is not passive surrender. It's active coherence. It's the ability to remain present without tightening. To stay open without chasing, to trust movement without demanding speed. When that becomes natural, reality no longer needs to be managed. It responds on its own. This is the level where creation becomes sustainable. Not because you're always high frequency, but because you know how to return to coherence when life pulls you out of it. You don't panic when things slow down. You don't overreact when things accelerate. You stay centered. And that centered state is magnetic. For those who feel this shift happening but want to stabilize it, not just experience it occasionally. This is exactly why quantum rebirth exists. It's not a method to force outcomes, but a process designed to help your nervous system, identity, and daily rhythms fully integrate this aligned state. Alongside it, the quantum grimoire serves as a practical companion, offering grounded rituals and recalibration tools to protect coherence in real life, not just during moments of insight. You'll find more about both in the pinned comment whenever it feels aligned to explore. But regardless of what you choose next, remember this. Reality never required force. It required permission. The moment your energy became aligned enough to stop pulling away from the present moment, reality had nothing left to resist. And when nothing is resisted, movement becomes inevitable. Not because you pushed, not because you tried harder, but because you finally stood still long enough for reality to meet you where you already